everybody, it's Mark. Thanks for joining me today. This is episode 3 of my podcast series, Mark My Words, Charles Gassenheimer's Lies. Before we get into it, I do want to update a couple of things, but don't worry, I won't be long. I know that y'all are really interested in hearing what Charles Gassenheimer had to say. I know that you had some frustration. We only got to see a few minutes of him on the last episode. I mentioned when this whole thing first started, this is a really big and complicated story to tell. And so you'll forgive me. I'm not trying to drag this out. I'm going to try to get everything that I know into these 6 episodes. And so before I get into it, there was not much news since I recorded the last episode, but I do want to share with you guys the most common question that I got from this week is, will Charles Gassenheimer go to jail for these actions that are being alleged against him? And so the news against Corizon, and obviously just to fill people in, if you're just tuning in and this is your first episode, you really need to go back and watch the first 2. This whole thing started with me covering the actions at Kelly Moore, but of course, since then, because it involves Gassenheimer and the Flax Group, I've also started covering to a certain extent what's going on at Corizon, and that's what these 2 and frankly many other texts that I received this week are referring to, is whether or not his actions at Corizon, whether or not Charles Gassenheimer's actions at Corizon are going to catch him some jail time. And the truth is, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert in these things, but there are some things. There's a difference in laws in the United States between criminal laws and civil laws, and what is being alleged against Charles Gassenheimer and the Flax Group and Corizon and that management team et al. What is being alleged against them are civil fraud actions. The letter that Elizabeth Warren sent, which was also signed by 9 other senators, including my senator here in Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, all of what they are alleging in their letter are violations of the bankruptcy laws, or certainly violations of the intent of the bankruptcy laws when they talk about this Texas two-step. And so those matters are going to be resolved by a civil court in some way. Those matters are going to either cost Gassenheimer and his group money, or they're not. They're going to just have them adjudicated in court and be found not liable. Those are the only 2 things that can happen there in a civil circumstance. But there's a difference between civil and criminal cases, right? I mean, in the United States, you can sue somebody for money basically anytime that you want, and those are civil cases, but that doesn't mean necessarily that a crime has been committed. But what's interesting about this circumstance with Corizon is that the senators involved, and again, that's Senator Elizabeth Warren primarily leading the charge out of Massachusetts. And if you read that letter and follow the links to previous letters that the group has written, there was another one in October, as well as some of the filings that have been done in the court, you will see that there are some concerning circumstances for Corizon's behavior. I'm recording this intro on March 10th. What you're going to see in a few minutes might have been recorded a few weeks ago, but I'm recording this intro on March 10th. As recently as this morning, I found those cases now total 660, some of which are for medical malpractice, and in fact, some of which are for wrongful death, because sadly, some of the people that Corizon failed to treat did not survive their incarceration, and it is alleged that they did not survive their incarceration because of actions, or in most cases, inactions, that were taken by Corizon. One former Corizon employee, a nurse by the name of Diane Jackson, said that the company saves money by skipping the ambulance and taking prisoners directly to the morgue. That does bring into question whether or not federal authorities or state authorities, there are 3 municipalities, California, Oklahoma, and Missouri, to my knowledge, that are involved in the actions against Corizon that are claiming that they paid Corizon for services to keep prisoners healthy and alive, and that Corizon did not deliver on those services. And so the failure to deliver on the services, the only remedy that the states have in that case is to try to sue for a breach of contract. Many of them are going to do that. They're among the 600 or 700 claimants. But if, as part of those investigations and as part of the investigation, which is now ongoing, the Department of Justice is responsible for all of the trustees in the United States that oversee the bankruptcy courts. And it was because of that the Department of Justice was involved with the bankruptcy court at all. And so now that 9 U.S. senators, 3 states, and the Department of Justice are involved in the Corizon bankruptcy, the question becomes, are those wrongful death suits, which are civil actions being brought by individuals or estates if somebody has passed away, will any of those rise to the level of criminal negligence or negligent homicide? And that would depend on the laws in the state. And so we don't know. Where I will say that if you read deeply, as I have, into the hours and hours and hours of links that you can reach just from the Elizabeth Warren letter. If you read deeply into that, you will see that there are some uses the word criminal behavior. And so I'd be curious to see that myself. Obviously, I'm just a reporter, and so I'm waiting for all of this news to come out just like you guys are. But I do think that this story has a lot more to tell. And so with that said, there was no major breaking news on Corizon or on Charles Gassenheimer or Kelly Moore since the last time I recorded. So I want to get right back into the episode, and quickly where we left it was I had just introduced you to Charles Gassenheimer, and in just those few minutes of speaking, I had to stop the conversation a number of times, sometimes to add context and sometimes to start setting up what I know is coming. And what you're going to really start seeing this episode to a certain extent, and really in the next 2 episodes that come after this, because as you get deeper and deeper into the podcast that I recorded with Gassenheimer, the shit that flows out of him is absolutely just remarkable. But one of the things that I think you're going to see in this episode, and I don't remember where exactly this comes up, I'm pretty sure you're going to hear or see this today, is as part of the introduction, we got an opportunity to talk about Gassenheimer's career. And during that, he actually mentioned Corizon, which of course at the time, I didn't know anything about. I don't know if he thought I wasn't going to fucking Google that, because by that point, obviously, just a Google search would have told me everything I needed to know. So I don't know if that's just arrogance or just a lack of skill, a lack of intellect that caused him to not just mention Corizon right there on my show, but here's where you're going to see the lying start. Here's where you're going to see the lying start with Charles Gassenheimer. It gets deeper as we get into the episode, but he's going to start by giving his own impression in his own words. You don't have to take it from me. His own impression in his own words of how things are going at Corizon. But before I hit the play on that, let me just remind you of a couple of facts. There are now close to 700 cases against Corizon Health. The vast majority of those are medical malpractice or other negligent type cases like that. There are countless cases, close to $100 million outstanding from vendors who have not been paid, and the totality of all of those claims is approaching $1 billion. That is the size of the loss created by Corizon Health, in excess of $1 billion, and people are dead because of Corizon Health's failure to deliver the medical care that they were paid to deliver. And because of that breach of contract, which is being alleged by hundreds of people, some people are dead. And this is what Charles Gassenheimer thinks of that circumstance.
Acquired the company on October 1st of last year, we really wanted to jump right in with both feet. And so while I'm new to the paint industry, I am a manufacturing guy at heart. I've built over 2 million square feet of a manufacturing plant in my career. I've been through the processes to get ISO 9001 certified in the manufacturing level. So I'm a manufacturing guy at heart, and so I'm super glad to be back in a manufacturing business again.
Well, let's hope that Kelly Moore put the right man in the right spot. And so you work for a private equity firm that bought Kelly Moore. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the Flax Group. So Michael Flax has been a very high net worth individual investor in Europe, mainly in the property markets as well as in the industrials businesses. This is now my second time acquiring a major industrial business in the US with Michael. The first was a business called Corizon Healthcare in Nashville, Tennessee.
Corizon Healthcare in Nashville, Tennessee. 14 months ago, this guy was thinking that was good news to mention Corizon Health here, right? Not 14, 12. This was recorded in February, 13 months ago. This guy was thinking, let me flex and mention Corizon right here. Wow.
And so that was a very successful transaction for us. And so we're pretty excited about Kelly.
There are hundreds of victims. I'll be quick here because I don't want to keep interrupting him. The 500 lawsuits are, generally speaking, for medical malpractice of sorts, medical neglect of sorts. They may be in many different categories, but all of those are in one category. All 500 of them are individual people that were victimized by Corizon, who was providing health services to prisons, if I'm not mistaken, in the state of Missouri, who is one of the 600 claimants against Corizon. And those 500 people they're all human beings that didn't get the health care that they needed. And I understand that for some people who are willing to victimize, it may be possible to look at somebody who's not empowered to complain when you hurt them. And it may be possible to justify behaviors against that group that has less ability to advocate for themselves and defend themselves. But I feel like those are the people that I find my heart most sensitive to. And so I struggle because of that. Now that I understand what he's done, it makes it far easier to speak about the ethics of this man, because to hurt people that can't fight back, come on, dude. And so let's get right into it. Kelly Moore is a major manufacturer of coatings in the United States. From what I've understood from some of the releases and conversations I've had, maybe as much as $500 million a year in sales, but most independent 340 at the time he closed them. Retailers, frankly, don't really know the brand. So why don't you tell us what exactly your plans are for Kelly Moore in the channel where they are not heavily represented now?
Yeah, look, it's fascinating, right? The 76-year-old brand. I think for the most part, if you were to ask anybody in Northern California who was going out looking for paint, they'd know Kelly Moore. I think it's very established in the Northern California market just because that's where the company was founded and originally headquartered. I think we moved our manufacturing operations to Hurst, Texas, which is pretty close here to Dallas, in the late 2010s timeframe, 2017, 2018 timeframe. And so we moved all our manufacturing here to Hearst. And then we have 157 stores across Texas, Nevada, California, and Oklahoma. So
just to clarify one thing there, he said that they moved the headquarters in about 2010 was his rough guess there. And in fact, that's not accurate. That's a lie. And so the company had began manufacturing in Hearst, Texas, somewhere around there. I don't have that exact date. But they were headquartered in California and had always been. It was Gassenheimer and his team, which moved the company to Texas, moved the headquarters of the company to Texas.
So we've got
those are company-owned stores, by the way.
Right. Company-owned stores. So we've got a nice footprint in terms of our core business. But one of the things that we think is at least obvious to me is the opportunity to continue to expand our footprint through the dealer channel. And so we see that channel as a huge opportunity. We've got additional capacity in our plant in Hearst, Texas. In fact, we could double our gallon capacity in terms of demand and still not run out of manufacturing capacity at Hearst. So we have an underutilized facility that we think if you're in particular in the Southwest and Southeastern U.S., what I like to say, a 1 day's drive from Hearst, we're very, very interested. That's not to say we don't want to continue to support our California stores.
So those stores were closed 12 months later. They were probably seeing shortages and having other problems within a few months of this, through the intentional process of them closing down Kelly Moore, beginning nearly right at the beginning when they bought the company.
Do you have independents in California now?
Yeah, so we have approximately 40 independent dealers today, but it's such a small part of our business. That's not to say we don't support our independent dealer channel, but as I've shared, the gentleman who runs that business for us, I want to see us grow and add 100 new dealers, and then another 100 and another 100. We just see such a huge opportunity there. And what I could say to you, Mark, is look, if you're an independent dealer or considering different alternatives, we're nimble, we're hungry, we want your business. We're not going to send you a 100-page agreement where you have to ask permission to do X, Y, and Z, right?
And so I remember when he said that. And I remember taking offense because everybody who heard that knows who he was speaking to. He was implying something derogatory about the relationship and the contracts between Benjamin Moore and their independent retailers. And that was obvious, right? He was doing that. Somebody had prompted him. That part wasn't me, I can tell you. Somebody had prompted him at some point along the way that maybe dealers struggle with that. And yeah, there probably are dealers that struggle with that. And so that's what he was speaking to without understanding my history at all. And if you've been following, there's some people listening right now who I know have been following for more than 25 years. If you're one of those people, you know that I've had a long and at times complicated relationship with Benjamin Moore, and that I'm a writer, and I've shared that. And that relationship goes back to the 1990s, Ivan Dupuy, and with every CEO since then. And that includes Dan Calkins, who was my boss for a little while. And while it's true he fired me, which sucked, and he shouldn't have, that was a mistake. The truth is that I have a deep connection to that company. I have dear friends that have worked for that company for decades. I wouldn't even be able to calculate how many hundreds and thousands of person years my friend circle, my network has put in at Benjamin Moore. And then the dealer network, just multiply those numbers by whatever. All of those dealers from all of those shows, all those years together, all that writing to those people who those are, right? That's me. And so now I felt insulted on their behalf. I remember feeling that right away. Like, who the fuck is this guy? He doesn't know a single thing about the fact that my family supported itself for 112 years as a Benjamin Moore retailer, or that I have family still working for the company. So he never even took the time to figure that out before. He didn't owe me anything. He didn't have to figure that out. But if you're not going to take the time to know who you're talking to, don't shit in their mouth. And that's what I was thinking when he said that.